right, welcome to the American Veteran Business Podcast, where we shine a spotlight on the remarkable journeys of veterans, entrepreneurs who have been taken the skills and discipline honed in the military and applied them to the business world. I'm your host, Dave Mastis, and together, of course, we have our co-host James here from Lifebook Military. Together, we're here to explore the stories of veterans who transitioned from serving our country to serving their communities through entrepreneurship.
And today we have the honor of speaking with a fellow U.S. MilVet community member who's using his experience in the armed forces to achieve success in business. And we're going to dive deep into his journey from where he grew up to his military service to the challenges and triumphs of starting his own business. He's got a wealth of experience and insight, and we're excited to share that story with you here today. So whether you're a veteran thinking about starting your own business or you're simply inspired by the stories of resilience and success of others, this podcast is for you. So let's go ahead and get started.
So today we have a great guest. His name is Gregory Livell. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Awesome to be here.
All right, sounds good. And he's starting a company called PR Security. And so we're going to learn a little bit about him and then learn about, more about his company that he's launching out of Washington State. So pretty exciting times. And so one of the first things we always ask people, Greg, is, where did you grow up?
I grew up everywhere my dad could work. I was born in Nebraska, lived in Washington, Missouri, Arizona, and Oregon. But I lived off grid for most of that in Arizona.
All right,
Okay.
what part of Arizona?
Seligman, right off Old Route 66, halfway between Kingman and Flagstaff.
Okay, right on. Yeah, it's beautiful country, I mean, Arizona is one of those places where if I was to move anywhere else, it's one of those places I think I would go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What kind of weather is your preference, Greg?
Man, I love hot weather, but being a heat casualty overseas twice does not make my body love it either. I honestly would rather move to Montana or Alaska, but my wife does not want to be that remote.
Yeah, I gotta disagree with my podcast partner there. I would never move to Arizona. I wouldn't move to where he is in Florida. I my whole life I grew up in California, so I hate the sun. I love the rain. Iraq and Afghanistan just kind of sealed that deal for me. And up here in Washington with you, brother, this is where I want to be. So I'm gonna stay here. You guys can have Arizona and Florida. That's all you.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
definitely
it's
beautiful up
always
here.
it's always funny because people say, "Oh, Florida's so hot." Florida, uh, in the summertime it's so hot. I'm like, man, I'm working most of the days, so I'm inside in air conditioning, and when I want to cool off, I'd go outside and go to the pool, So I don't mind it at all. So you said you're in the Covington area, right?
Yes, yes. Just south
All
of
right.
Seattle.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a great, vibrant community, and I mean, so much business opportunity in that area. And a lot of people that I know, they get out of Joint Base Lewis McChord, that's their JBLM, and they stay in the area just because there's so much opportunity. How's your family like Washington?
My wife was born and raised here. Didn't move more than 10 minutes away from where she was born. So
Oh
um,
wow.
she loves it. This is home for her.
Yep.
You
Yep.
might be stuck then if this isn't your total cup of tea. But like Dave said, there's a lot of opportunity here, man. There's a lot of opportunity just for life as well. So I love it. So
Yeah, I got 4 kids, the oldest being 12 and the youngest being 1. So I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
no time soon for sure.
Right on. Yeah, I have 2 kids myself, and man, I would love to have had more, but uh, we just, getting older, and I didn't actually have my first son till I was 38 years old, you
Oh
know.
wow.
Yeah, and I had 18 years in the military already, and I told my wife, I was like, we better start having kids because you know what, I'm getting a little old, and
That's fair.
yeah, yeah. But the thing is I figured I was going to do 30 years in the Army, never leave, and I held my son in my arms, and I was like, "That's it. I'm out. I'm going to retire." I had already spent 4 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. But tell us about your military career. What did you do in the military?
Yeah, so I joined in 2007. Well, I spent several years trying to find what I wanted to do as an adult, but I joined in 2007. Um, right out of AIT, I went straight to Iraq, did a year in Iraq, spent 4 months at home, did 13 months in Kuwait, and then came home and kind of trying to figure out what life was after that. I married my wife right before I deployed. So for the
Mhm.
first 4 years we were married, I was gone for 3 of those. Um, But yeah,
Yeah.
just kind of tried to figure out what I was going to do in life. And then the Oso landslide happened, found out she was pregnant. Wildfires happened, found out she was pregnant. So as I was doing things in the military, I realized that God was pulling me back home. So I've been trying to keep the house held down, and now we have two more kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, and trying to get this business off the ground now. I got out in 2017, and it was a medical discharge. I was unretainable due to injuries that the
Yeah.
Army had caused. So
Yeah. What was your MOSs while you were in?
94 Fox 20. I was a NCO and squad leader for a chemical unit out in Grandview. I was the master driver trainer. I was the um, M2 and M4 trainer. I was expert qual on those while I was deployed. So I just kind of, you know, drifted right into that. So
Right on.
Right on.
Greg, as you were telling your story there, I was just thinking to myself, that is a character developing story if I've ever heard one, right? I mean, right at a basic, right at AIT into Iraq and in a fresh new marriage, and then just trying to figure all that stuff out as you were coming out, and like you said, God had these plans for you. And one thing I know about being a Christian is God cares a lot more about our character development than he does about giving us what we want or what we think we want, right? So that's actually a pretty good deal. I know that probably wasn't the most fun all the time, but I'll bet you learned a ton of really valuable lessons going through that.
you know how diamonds are made. It's from heat and pressure, right? So I
Yeah.
was stretched and pushed and pulled and broken during that whole time. And, I was not a Christian at that time. I was raised Jehovah's Witness, so I was definitely anti everything.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then, God was working in me, and you never see it until you're past it and you look back and you're like, oh, that's why I was put through all that. So I'm
That's
thankful and blessed.
that's funny. You ever watch that show, The Big Bang Theory?
Oh yeah.
So there was a scene that somebody's taken out and put in a meme. You see it all over Facebook, and it's the caption reads "Me reading God's plan," and it's Sheldon flipping through somebody's paper, and he's going flipping the pages. He's like, "Why, why, why?" And then he flips one more. He's like, "Oh, that's why." It's
Yep.
like
Yeah.
that's me reading God's plan, right? It's like you never know until after you've gone through it, and then you get the answer.
Yeah, God's plan is perfect, and we're unable to actually comprehend what's going on. So we're not going to know it until we're through it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's the best for us. You know it is. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is that especially, during a time of war, you signed up and you probably knew that you were going to go to war, the moment you got out. I'm sure your drill sergeants probably told you, hey man, you're probably going to go to a unit that needs people to deploy.
little did I know, Washington State is the #1 deployed National Guard in the U.S.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of stuff up here. I'll tell you, when I was in basic is when 9/11, I was in basic during 9/11, right? So I'm on the 3 rope bridge, the first obstacle in the confidence course. I'm halfway across. They call me back and they tell us what just happened, right? Because the
Oh
planes
no.
hit while I'm on the obstacle course. So I remember we get back to the barracks and we hadn't seen our main drill sergeant. He wasn't there at the confidence course, and he comes busting into the bay, and he's like, "Privates, you're going to Iraq, privates. Just to let you know now, you're going to Iraq." And I was like, "Oh man," because my wife and a buddy of mine that I went to basic with, our wives were talking. They were like, "Okay, they're off to basic now. If we could just stay out of any wars for the next how many years?" And in basic, the planes hit the towers, so it was like drill sergeants were excited. We were all scared to death, but they were excited. It was pretty funny.
You got out of the military and tell us what you did when you first got out.
I actually joined the Union on my tail end of my service. So being in the National Guard, we have to work a full-time job and serve, which is kind of hard.
Right.
And at the time, we're the only chemical unit in the state left because they disbanded a lot of the 420th Chemical Battalion. So being with the 792nd, I was a hard NCO that was everywhere all the time, filling in for E6s and E7s all the time.
Sure.
Um, so I worked aerospace, which was the better paying part of it. And then I got an opportunity to join Local 32 as a pipe fitter. And I've been doing that ever since. Went through the 5-year program, and now I'm a journeyman for McKinstry,
Okay.
making pretty good money.
Can't complain about that.
Yeah.
No,
Uh,
no, absolutely not.
but you've definitely been bitten by the entrepreneur bug, so it looks like you're gonna launch a new business up there as well.
Yeah, so at the height of COVID, we got laid off for 10 weeks and I didn't know what I was going to do for work, but I was on the standby list, right?
Yeah.
And we spent all that time doing home projects. And then I realized that this isn't going to be around forever. This job isn't. So I was like, well, I need to find something that I'm good at. And, God gives you a certain gift that you're good at that brings you a lot of joy, but also is good for your community and good for everybody else around you.
Right.
So I was talking to my wife about it. She goes, if you do this, this is going to be your one thing. And as soon as I started the business in 2021, it took off. I mean, it's not like I'm making a ton of money, but I'm essentially at the point where I have my concealed carry classes. I teach with CJTC. I teach security at churches and schools and co-ops. And now I'm about to open a security guard company to do a one-stop shop, and it's going to be a huge blessing. I'm actually writing up investment proposals right now for a couple businesses here that are near and dear to my heart, and we'll see if everything gets going. I have my insurance in hand. I'm just waiting on my license from the DOL.
Greg, I firearm safety, especially people that teach it, is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I grew up, my father was a police officer my whole life. He retired as police chief. And he taught many years. And I think he still dabbles. I mean, he's old and retired now, so he's out of everything. But growing up in that environment, firearm safety was something that was a big deal in my household. And I've been in a lot of units in the Army where I was in one unit where they used to post all the firearms mishaps that happened in our unit up in the CQ desk. And so you just have this wall of people that had done really messed up things, and some of them ended in fatalities from people just being dumb. And I'll never, the one that sticks with me, that haunts me, is there was one where this soldier was trying to teach his kids how to handle a gun, and for whatever reason he didn't properly clear it, which is it's the first thing that when something goes wrong you know about, right? And he's telling his kids, you don't do this, you don't do that, you don't put the gun up to your head and pull the trigger, and he did, and he shot himself in front of his kids. And I just think to
Man,
myself, something like that is so horrific and so avoidable, right? And sometimes it's not about what you know, it's about what you condition, right? What you train, what's become second nature. Obviously, better than to do things like that. But if you're in a course like yours, if you spend time working with people, working on this subject, then those mishaps don't even come into your mind to do. You know what I mean? And so I think what you do is really valuable. And I would urge anyone that is engaged with firearms, even if you think what you know is enough, it might not be, you know, engage in safety courses. I think that's just a good thing for people to do.
yeah. Since essentially the new presidency started, we've had record first-time gun sales to in America almost every single year. 5.8 million, 6.4 million new gun owners, but you don't see them going through classes. You don't see them taking safety courses and stuff. And it's kind of disheartening because you're like, we're not trying to. It's like if everyone owned a Ferrari on the road, you think the roads would be safe?
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's like, yeah, I grew up in the kind of a similar culture. My dad was in the Army back in the early 70s, and I had one. I hunted off grid for a long time, and it was just part of who we were. But and we're gonna jump on addiction for a minute because I went through Sergeant Q's mental health kind of basic training down in Mexico, where he puts veterans with PTSD through this kind of mental health camp to kind of uncover what triggers you and what kind of sets you off and stuff, and then you change that mentality. You take those thoughts captive and work the other direction. It's the same thing with learning a new skill like firearm safety. You have a bunch of bad habits you've built over the years where those neurons are nice and firing. That synapses is easy firing. You have to change that second nature, that fight, flight, or freeze. And if you
Right.
don't do that intentionally, they say it takes 2 years on average to change that addiction or that knee jerk reaction. So it takes a long time to get rid of those bad habits.
Right. No, I 100% agree with that. And we all know that from the military, you don't, they don't just walk you into basic training, throw you an M16 or an M4 and go, all right, go shoot it. You know, how many you guys remember the dime drills we used to have to do? We'd put the cleaning rod in the barrel and have to work through the four fundamentals of marksmanship. That's before anybody even let us look at a bullet. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We had to do that over and over and over again because what you don't want is to get live ammunition in that weapon and do something stupid and hurt or kill somebody, right?
Yep.
So you got to condition that. And if people aren't doing that, it doesn't matter how good you are, man. When that instinct hits, when that high stress environment hits, that your subconscious is going to take over. And if that's not trained, it doesn't matter what you know. You know what I mean? That fight, flight, or freeze is going to own you.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
just to sort of emphasize on that a little, something I always like to tell people, I had a platoon sergeant, he said there's two ways to learn things. The first way is repetition, and the second way is through significant emotional
Yep.
events. And I tell my son that, and sort of drill that in his head, everything in life, you got to just do it over and over, or you're going to learn things the hard way, and you don't want to learn things the hard way. So,
Yep.
uh, it's good stuff.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
so, uh, tell us, do you have any future goals that you want to accomplish over the next 6 months, a year or so?
I have a few actually in mind. So in the next 30 days, I hope to solidify the license for the company and hire my first guard. I actually have 6 pending contracts right now of people looking to hire. So the demand is out there. It's just, how fast can I get the wheels rolling? In January, I was accepted as a candidate for the show The Beta Blocks in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is an entrepreneur think tank reality show.
Okay.
They get a bunch of new startup entrepreneurs together with a bunch of successful millionaires, and they talk about how to properly do that while doing it in like a game show kind of framework where you have competitions every day, and then the winners of that day wear a jersey, and at the end, the top 3 winners get 10,000, and then their name is essentially in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Um, Sergeant Q, a good friend of mine, Aaron Q, was with First Anglico. He won 3 seasons in a row, so now he's a judge, and he's like, dude, this will like propel your business in the direction you want to go.
Okay.
So my goal is to attend that in January and then come back and hit the ground running. One of my good friends I was deployed with in Kuwait, Nathan Grill, is opening an online AI ran gun store that with every gun sale, one of my holsters is able to be bought with it. And it's going to essentially be a self seller. So I'm hoping January I can quit my 9 to 5 and I can push these businesses and be home with my kids more.
Right on. So
Yeah,
let
and
me, what was the process of getting on that show? Because I've heard that the processes of shows like that, like the application process, is just grueling.
To be completely honest, it fell in my lap. I was talking, you know how Facebook and Google likes to listen to you in the background.
Yeah.
I was talking to Sergeant Q at church about this, and I was like, "Hey, man, I heard you were on here and won." He goes, "Yeah, I won 3 years in a row." And I'm like, "Dang, that's amazing. Tell me more about it." And then the next day, I saw an ad come up saying, "Are you a startup entrepreneur or looking to start up a business? Apply here to see if you can be a candidate." So I applied. It took 15 minutes. Um, it went through like a filtering system where they looked for keywords or whatever, whatever. Then it popped up in front of a person that said, "Okay, is this somebody we want on our show?" And I guess I was appealing. So I went through a 45-minute casting call with one of their casting directors, and he absolutely liked what I had to provide as far as an entrepreneur to the businesses and to the community. So he invited me on. I just had to have to pay $4,000 for the slot and show up.
Okay. Right on. Well, good deal.
yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. What a great opportunity, and uh, I'm going to look forward, to seeing when it comes out so we can watch it as well. That's awesome. You're a future celebrity.
Right.
Yeah. So, Greg, tell us where we can find you if we wanted to look for you online.
Pivotal Readiness is my main website. That's my umbrella. I'm hoping to make a C corp, but I'm on Facebook and Instagram. Um, the full name is Gregory Livell.
All right. Yeah, that's awesome. So just as we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say, thanks so much for coming on. It's always great meeting another veteran business, especially in Washington State. one of my old stomping grounds, and of course, one of the stomping grounds that we have here with James. But it's always inspiring to hear, how veterans are, applying, especially what they learned in the military, moving into the civilian world and doing great things. So great, great job, and thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Big time.
Yeah, 100%. So I'll close this out here, and I'll just say to everybody out there that if you're a veteran who's thinking about starting your own business, remember that you're not alone. There are countless resources and a supportive community of people just like Greg ready to help you succeed. And as we've heard today, the transition from military to business ownership comes with its own set of challenges, but it also offers incredible opportunities. And we're happy you're here with us today, hearing about some of them.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, guys.
All right. This is Dave Mastis from AmericanVeteranBusiness.com. And this is our podcast. And we're glad that you came today. If you could do us a huge favor and smash that like button, share us, make some comments. It's going to help us to, help that algorithm, which will help other veteran businesses as well. So please help us out. And we look forward to seeing you next time.